Morning, everyone. It's good to see everyone here today. We had a very lively discussion within the caucus about continuing House Democratic caucus priorities. This week on the floor, there will be legislation to advance the issue of helping out our fellow citizens in Puerto Rico with supplemental assistance given the continuing trauma that they are experiencing both in the aftermath of the hurricanes and most recently the earthquakes that have afflicted the island. We expect that legislation will be on the floor on Friday, led by Chairwoman Nita Lowey, and we greatly appreciate the advocacy of Congresswoman Nydia Velázquez. We will also have legislation on the floor connected to promoting the right to organize that will be put forth by Chairman Bobby Scott and the Education and Labor Committee. We know that organized labor, working families, hardworking Americans, middle-class folks have been under assault in this country led by Donald Trump. He is not a blue-collar president. He is doing all that he can to undermine blue-collar America. And we're going to do all that we can to make sure that everyday Americans, that working Americans, that organized labor, which is a pathway into the middle class, can thrive in America, notwithstanding the efforts by this president to decimate them. We're also going to continue to work hard on our top priority, which is to lower health care costs for everyday Americans. The president suggested that he has an interest in trying to drive down the high price of life-saving prescription drugs. The House has already acted with respect to this issue. We've passed legislation to bring down the high price of life-saving prescription drugs, passed legislation that would give the federal government the power to negotiate lower drug prices on behalf of everyday Americans, passed legislation so that the price that the American people pay is more in line with the low prices that people in other developed countries throughout the world pay, including Canada and Australia and Germany and France and Great Britain, to name just a few countries. So we've had more than 400 bills that have been sent over to the Senate over the last year and change. 275 of those bills have been bipartisan in nature. We're going to continue to advance our For the People agenda, make life better for working families, middle-class folks, senior citizens, the poor, the sick, the afflicted, the least, the lost, and the left behind. That has been our top priority. That is our top priority. That will continue to be our top priority. With that, let me yield to our distinguished Vice Chair, Katherine Clark.
Thank you, and good morning, everyone. I want to begin by thanking Chairman Jeffries and all of our impeachment managers for their exceptional work in the Senate these past few weeks. Their role in defending our democracy, in honoring the truth and their oath of office, has made the American people and certainly the entire caucus very proud. History will honor you, Hakeem, will honor the managers, and will honor the truth that you have put forth. Speaking of the truth, last night we heard a lot from the president, and most of it was fiction. So let's begin to set the record straight. If Donald Trump cares about protecting people with pre-existing conditions, why is he in court trying to take away their health care coverage? If Donald Trump cares about the environment and planting trees, why is he taking a sledgehammer to the EPA and failing to address climate change with the urgency it requires? If Donald Trump cares about lowering the cost of prescription drug prices, why isn't he calling on Mitch McConnell to pass H.R. 3, legislation that will do just that the House has already sent to the Senate? He says he will protect Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security. Yet in his 2020 budget, he cut those very programs, broke his promise he made in the campaign, and revealed his statements last night as a lie. If Donald Trump cares about our economy, I suggest he take up the Paycheck Fairness Act to close the gender pay gap currently holding back women and an economy that is inclusive of everyone. If Donald Trump cares about public education, why is he gutting civil rights protections for students? Last night, I heard hypocrisy, not solutions, not even reality. We know Donald Trump's record. He has run from the gun violence epidemic and hid behind the NRA. He has dismissed climate change and threatened global allegiances. He has demonized and demoralized hardworking immigrant families. He doesn't welcome law-abiding refugees, as he said last night. He puts children in cages. And he's solicited foreign interference into our elections for his own personal gain. The state of the White House and this administration is in chaos. House Democrats are proud to stand up for the American people and for the truth in the face of the misinformation and lies that were told to them last night.
Questions? I was getting nervous for a minute. I've been missing you guys for the last few weeks.
I wanted to get your reaction to the speaker tearing up her speech last night and whether you guys thought that was all out of character for her. She's told the public before in some ways to be respectful of the office of the presidency. Just wondering what your thoughts are.
As far as I'm concerned, the shredder wasn't available, and so she did what she needed to do.
You still have legislation that you want to confidential for pricing infrastructure. How do you do that with all of this partisan gridlock that seems to have reached a low point?
Well, House Democrats have taken the position consistently, led by Speaker Pelosi, that we are going to work with President Trump whenever and wherever we can on behalf of the American people, but disagree when we must. When our values or the ideas of American democracy or his efforts to decimate the middle class and those who aspire to be part of it are implicated. This is not just talk on behalf of House Democrats. We've walked the walk. Every single thing that President Trump pointed to as an accomplishment on behalf of the American people occurred because of leadership from House Democrats. President Trump pointed to criminal justice reform and the First Step Act. That started in the House, an effort led by Doug Collins on the Republican side and many House Democrats. With respect to the U.S.-Mexico-Canada trade agreement, that is an accomplishment because of leadership from Speaker Pelosi and Richie Neal and House Democrats, who indicated that we wanted to get to yes if we can substantially improve the agreement, which we did across a wide variety of areas, including labor rights, environmental rights, enforceability, and dealing with a pharmaceutical issue on behalf of the American people that needed to be addressed. President Trump pointed to paid family medical leave. That was an initiative led by House Democrats. And we made it clear, if you want funding for your so-called Space Force, we are going to need any spending agreement to provide paid family leave for millions of Americans, including our military families. And so we've already demonstrated a willingness to work with this president on behalf of the American people, notwithstanding any other issues that we may have with his incredible divisiveness. And we're going to continue to do just that.
Mr. Jeffries, can you talk a little bit about the vote tonight, and do you have any concerns if it ends up being a bipartisan vote to acquit the president?
Well, House managers have proven our case against President Trump with clear and convincing evidence, overwhelming evidence, and a mountain of evidence. President Trump corruptly abused his power by soliciting foreign interference in an American election solely for his personal political gain. We have proved that decisively as Republican senator after Republican senator, including Lamar Alexander and Lisa Murkowski, have publicly indicated. House managers have done our job as it relates to defending our democracy. It's time for the Senate to do their job, and I'll leave it at that. We'll see what happens on the Senate floor this afternoon.
On the Senate floor, some of the Republicans were characterized your unwillingness, or your not subpoenaing John Bolton last fall as a mistake, has sort of showed that you were in too much of a hurry to get the articles over there. What do you make of that, and also do you anticipate that you will be subpoenaed soon?
Well, the White House has made an incredibly duplicitous argument. On the one hand, the White House argues that we should have subpoenaed individuals like John Bolton. But then they go to court and argue that the House does not have the power to subpoena individuals like John Bolton. That is the argument that the White House is making right now through the Justice Department in court on the Don McGahn matter. My grandmother had an expression for that level of duplicity. They are talking out of both sides of their mouth, and it's all reckless lies. To begin with, John Bolton made it clear that if we subpoenaed him in the House, he would not comply. And so everything that John Bolton could have said, we've demonstrated through other witnesses, but it was nonetheless important for the Senate to act and hold a fair trial consistent with their past practice. Every single Senate trial in American history on the question of impeachment, and there have been 15, included witnesses. The average number of witnesses in the Senate impeachment trials that have taken place to date was 33. What's the number in the impeachment trial of President Donald John Trump? 0. That is not a fair trial. And that's the standard that the American people understand.
So are you going to subpoena
Catherine?
now?
That's a question for further discussion, and that'll be led, I presume, by the Speaker and by Chairman Schiff. Paul?
Do you worry at all about politics of the impeachment process and whether it has ended better for Trump than when it started 3 months ago, 4 months ago?
Well, I'll address that, but let me yield to Catherine as well.
I don't, and I'll tell you why. Because it is always right to follow the truth and follow the facts. And what we have seen and been hoping is that patriotism would overtake Trumpism. And that is true with the American people. The American people understand what's at stake here. And Donald Trump will do a victory lap today, as we anticipate the Senate will vote for an acquittal. But history and the truth are right behind them, and they are going to overtake them. And that is, whatever party you're in, whatever reason you come to Congress, it is times like this in our American history where we have to stand up and do what's right and put the facts and follow the truth and follow our Constitution. And what we are seeing today is a choice to support a man, a flawed president, out of fear of his Twitter account, out of fear of drawing a primary opponent, out of your own political fear. And they have decided to put their own political ambitions and fears over that of our Constitution and the needs of the American people. So I have no regrets about this caucus, the majority in the House, that said we are going to do what's right. We are going to continue to do the work on health care and infrastructure, but we are also going to root out corruption and have our constitutional requirement of oversight be on two tracks, that we do both things. And what we have put forth and is uncontested, and which our impeachment managers have so brilliantly articulated for the American people and for history, is that democracy matters. And when we let a president use our military aid, use his office to try and dig up dirt on a political opponent, it is far more than the outcome of any one election. It is those pillars that hold up our democracy that the Senate is attacking. And so we stand proudly by the impeachment of this president. And we know that history and the facts and the truth are always the right side to be on.
Catherine Clark is exactly correct. Democracy matters. The Constitution matters. The truth matters. House Democrats were left with no choice but to act, because this president corruptly tried to interfere in our free and fair elections in a manner that strikes at the very fabric of our democracy. He has solicited foreign interference from the Russians. He has solicited foreign interference from the Chinese. In this particular instance, he solicited foreign interference from the Ukrainians and withheld $391 million in military and security aid as part of a geopolitical shakedown scheme. We could not afford to stand on the sidelines in that instance. And so we moved forward. We did the right thing. Now it's on the Senate. America's watching. The world is watching. And the eyes of history are watching to see what the Senate will do with their constitutional responsibility. Cheryl?
I have two questions. Given your role in impeachment, I wonder what it was like for you to be on the escort committee last night to escort this president down the aisle. And then second, when you put on your realistic hat, what really can be accomplished with this president in the remainder of this term?
Well, from my standpoint, it was the right thing to do to continue to execute upon, my responsibility as the chair of the caucus, as is traditionally the case, to escort this president, as we would any president, into the House chamber. Needless to say, there wasn't a lot of conversation between me and him on the way in. But I executed my responsibility. With respect to moving forward with this president, when he mentioned infrastructure, you saw both sides of the aisle stand. Our infrastructure is crumbling. Our bridges, our roads, our tunnels, our airports, our mass transportation system crumbling. It's the right thing to do for the American people to try to infuse a significant amount of resources into fixing our infrastructure, or at least making a significant down payment in that regard. And if the president is serious about doing it in terms of fixing our infrastructure, then House Democrats are serious about getting something done, as we've demonstrated on criminal justice, on paid family leave, and on trade. Oh, yeah, Catherine.
Can I just add, I think all we need to know about continuing to work with Donald Trump was set in the very first moments of the State of the Union, when once again the Speaker extended her hand and he refused to shake it. We will continue to work on things that are positive for Americans at home. We're going to continue to work on those issues that are important to them. If we can do that with the president and our colleagues across the aisle, we will continue to do that. But when someone won't even shake the hand of the Speaker of the House, it tells you where his priorities lie, and they are squarely with himself, not with the American people.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask, as you go forward now, where will the focus be? Will it be on continuing to investigate the president, or will it be more on the other issues that you've been concerned about?
From the very beginning, our majority has been focused on dealing with kitchen table pocketbook issues to make life better for everyday Americans in connection with our For the People agenda. That is where our focus will continue to be, and hopefully we can find common ground on the infrastructure question. Let me make one or two other observations and then yield to Catherine. You know, the president came into the House chamber and peddled lie after lie in an extraordinary fashion, two in particular that should shock the conscience. One, the Trump Justice Department is in court right now trying to strip away protections from pre-existing conditions that exist under law that would be devastating to more than 100 million Americans. Yet he said to the American people last night that he's trying to protect people with pre-existing conditions. That was a cold-blooded lie. President Trump also said that he inherited a mess. Inherited a mess? When Barack Obama came into office, the unemployment rate was at 10%. When he left, it was at 5%. When Barack Obama came into office, the stock market was at 6,000. When he left, it was north of 18,000. During the 8 years of Barack Obama's presidency, he reduced the deficit by $1 trillion. In the 8 years of President Bush's presidency, America lost approximately 500,000 private sector jobs. During the 8 years of Barack Obama's presidency, we gained more than 14 million private sector jobs. During Barack Obama's presidency, the automobile industry was saved from destruction. And during Barack Obama's presidency, more than 20 million previously uninsured Americans gained health care coverage, and more than 100 million Americans gained protection from pre-existing conditions that had not previously existed under law. That's a mess. That's a mess. Lie after lie after lie peddled to the American people. Final question?
I wanted to ask, so at this point, if the president is reelected, I mean, you guys are potentially facing 4 more years, would you consider continuing investigations then, or what do you see for potentially 5 more years of working with Donald Trump?
Well, our focus right now is on the congressional session that is in front of us and the opportunities to try to work together to get things done on behalf of the American people. It's very interesting that people were very skeptical of the notion when Speaker Pelosi and Chairman Neal and others said, we want to get to yes on the USMCA. Many of my Republican colleagues on the other side of the aisle were skeptical about that. You know why? Because they would have never done it. They would have never done it. Their goal during Barack Obama's presidency, as articulated, was to make him a one-term president. And on issues that they had previously agreed with, the framework for the Affordable Care Act was put into the public domain by the Heritage Foundation in 1989 or so, and then implemented into law by a Republican governor who became a Republican senator and was previously a Republican presidential nominee. But when Barack Obama put forward that framework that they put into the public domain, they rejected it because it was all about obstruction. But we're very different. Our DNA as Democrats is very different because we're committed to getting things done on behalf of the American people, even if it means working with this particular person sitting at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue at the moment. So we're not focused on 4 more years. We're focused on what's ahead of us right now in terms of getting things done on behalf of everyday Americans. Thank you.